You're listening to the Spondifferous podcast. This one is What is an Artist? Alternative titles for this episode include Why Don't I Ever Know What Day It Is? Or Why I Shower Once a Week. Also, the difference between sky blue and periwinkle.
That's not blue, that's blue.
Ooh, man, that hurts my nose. What a snob. Enjoy the episode.
What is an artist?
Well, I think that there's a lot of stereotypes for what an artist is. Like that guy that doesn't ever know what day it is, or they wake up and they don't know what time it is, or they miss a lot of meetings, or they don't shower often. And all of those are funny, and you can see those in movies and things. But I don't think that an artist is any one thing or person or trait. I do my best job of like understanding what an artist is based on what art form you're doing. So if you're painting, or making music or cooking, because yes, I think a chef could be an artist. Even though like the first definition that comes up if you Google what is an artist, it's like someone that paints or something like that. I think it's when these kinds of people give someone else the opportunity to feel something. They give them an experience. Or if you're a public speaker, right? I think that maybe you're an artist as a public speaker if you're able to capture someone's attention really well, maybe even persuade their beliefs, or capture a large crowd's attention. You're just one man standing there. You've kind of turned public speaking into an art at that point. And again, like if you're an athlete or a dancer or even a mathematician or scientist, I think that being an artist turns into being the highest form of expert, or maybe just another form of expert. You're a true professional. You have focused on what you do in a way where it's calculated and purposeful, Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of tools that people can use if they're artists, like, being comfortable. If you're an artist, I think that you're maybe more comfortable with the unknown. I think if you're an artist, you are good at idea creation, right? I don't know that everybody's good at that.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know that it's any one thing.
Yeah. That makes sense. I consider an artist anybody who is able to basically communicate a message through a medium. And so the artist acts as a messenger, and the medium is anything that messenger uses to convey the message. So for us musicians, for example, we can speak with our mouths like anybody else can, but with the chords and melodies that we choose, they all have tone and character. And so if I were to choose a minor chord rather than a major chord, it would make you sad rather than happy. Or if I play a regular major triad, it wouldn't take you off guard, and it would almost feel like an answer.
Whatever a triad is.
Just three notes together. But if I voice, same thing as a major chord, pretty much.
I'm not a musician.
If I voice that major triad differently, and or if I add a seventh or a ninth, then instead of being an answer, it turns into a question. And so, like, the way we choose to use our medium of music, it directly influences the way that the people who are listening to it receive it. I think for artists, the goal ultimately should be to use that medium to find truth, to find it, explain it, explore it, and to learn more about it. And when I say truth, I mean it in a lot of different forms. It's truth.
Is that truth for you or truth for others?
Truth is what resonates. Truth isn't just 1 + 2 = 2, or 1 + 1 = 2. Truth is also the way that a 3-minute song about somebody that you've never met, written by somebody that you've never met, can still find a way to bring you to tears. So I think an artist's duty is not just to see truth, but to riff off of it and to tell it in a new way. The way that, like a painter would see blue and yellow and be able to combine it to make green. It's not changing what the truth of what blue and yellow fundamentally are, but it's being able to see the best in those two and use them to make something new. And so I think an artist ideally is someone who can communicate truth through their medium.
Well, for that painter, like if they're painting with colors or even painting with anything, maybe they're painting with mud.
Yeah.
There's a creative idea. What is art? What is it that they're creating?
Art, riffing off of my previous answer, is the message the artist is trying to portray. At least that's how I go about it. And so making the art is kind of like a journey. An artist may know exactly what they want to say, or maybe not, but the way they want to say it and how to express that message is the journey that takes countless twists and turns during the entirety of its creation. It's almost like the artist is in a maze that's being created while the artist is trying to navigate the maze. And so sometimes you hit a dead end and you have to backtrack. Other times, like maybe you find a cheat code and like a little fairy raises you above to let you see above the maze, but just enough to see the next turn. You can't actually see the end yet.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. And so the path that you took to get there is eventually displayed for everyone to see. And I think,
Boy, would I love to see the entire maze laid out.
right?
As an artist trying to make something.
That would be beautiful.
I guess that's what would be called a genius. And I think we might have just discovered that I am a normal person.
You discovered that.
Up here on my high horse, just like, all right, I'm stepping down. I'm sorry.
It's good. We got that self-awareness going. Everything's good.
You could keep going. That's, oh man.
Well, I mean, the ultimate point was just that maze and the path that you took to get through it. Eventually, if you're able to get to the end, is I think the thing that we call art. And so you wound up with a story or something to say, and with care and time, eventually, hopefully, you have the right way to say it, because those two are equally important.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think art is just something. Mm-hmm. I think art has to do with a relationship between two things, like you being the artist and someone else being an observer. So I think art is something that gives someone else an experience. Just by looking at it, maybe the art itself gives them an experience. With painting, you look at a painting, you might get emotional. I'd say that's more true for music. Or maybe with a painting, art is an expression of a human experience rather than something that gives you an experience in and of itself. Or maybe the experience that it's giving you is the experience of observing the human experience.
Yeah.
That's larger
so many experiences
around it.
I think expression is a great word for that.
Yeah. And I did use the word experience a lot. But in that, somebody observing art. And I think you could break this down for, cooking, doing math, playing basketball, like what is art around each of those things. But with drawing, with music, really drawing in particular, I think art is something that needs to be exaggerated. Because just like as a cook makes a meal, you eat it and you might think, that's bland. And for anyone out there that's like me, like a month ago or 6 months ago, I didn't know what bland actually meant. No joke.
Really?
There are so many simple, common words that people use that it's like, you're not going to just know what these things mean.
A lot of the times it's
without
inferred.
learning it.
Yeah, you just assume what they mean.
And, I looked it up. It was easy. Bland is flavorlessness. Like if you eat food and it tastes like maybe you ate a rice cake, there's not much to that for your tongue. The relationship between bland food and this magical thing called salt. You add salt to food and it brings out flavors that are already there. That's magic. Yeah. I love that. But also salt has its own flavor. You don't want to add too much. That's the art of cooking. You don't want to add too much or else you just make something that tastes salty because it does have a flavor. With photos, could you look at a photo then and say, that photo is bland? and know what that statement means because the food you ate was bland, the photo you look at is bland. I don't know what that would mean. Maybe the photo is capturing a subject that's not that great, but I think what it really means is that, maybe there's no contrast. If you're a good photographer, you really want to have shadows in there as well as highlights. It's not always just about color. And I think a bland photo would be flat, would be plain, would be boring. I even think
Probably wouldn't have much depth to it.
Yeah. And I even think this could go as far as like a soccer player kicking a soccer ball. You could watch him kick it and you could say, that was bland.
There was zero passion in that kick.
Yeah, like a public speaker. Like if he comes in there with passion and energy and he just comes in there with heat like an athlete.
If it looks like they're excited to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you are allowing yourself, I guess, to feel moved, you have a better chance at moving others. But now I'm totally bunny trailing, but I think that this is such a big point of why art needs to be exaggerated. No matter what art form you're doing, from cooking to being an athlete to painting, as you become more exaggerated, your chance to express a human experience, because someone else isn't really experiencing kicking the ball for themselves, or speaking on stage for themselves. But the more you exaggerate, the better you do at expressing that human experience for other people to have an experience and feel something.
So it sounds kind of weighty, not in a bad way, but in a really cool and good way to word it that way. But
like blue?
Cool like
Cool
blue,
like whip?
Cool like you at the beginning of this episode when you thought there was a chance that you were a genius.
Oh, I see.
Sorry to bring that back. But with all that said, do you think that means that everything you create as an artist has to have a purpose?
That's a good question. No. I think there's different kinds of people, actually. Let's get this clear. Not every artist is equal. I think there's art for purpose, and I think there's art for pleasure. But before I break that down, I already know there are examples in music, right, where maybe a musician made art for pleasure. I'll break it down. Art for pleasure would be more like, I'm doing this for me, because I need it for some reason. In my human experience, in my life, I need to do art for me. Art for purpose.
Meaning they don't really care if other people like it?
Well, I don't even think that comes into it yet. Okay. It's not all these thoughts of whatnot. It's kind of saying there are a lot of people that are artists, right? And if you make art, even if it's just for you, just because you need it, maybe it's like therapy. You are an artist now because you took part in making art. That's another definition, I guess, of being an artist. Art for pleasure isn't making art for others, because I don't think this is a conversation of making art for me versus making art for others. I think art for purpose is closer to making art for ourselves, like all people everywhere.
For the good of humanity?
Yeah, like there's an actual somewhat of a movement behind it. I mean, when I listen to a sculptor, talk about like Michelangelo doing David, do his art back in the day when he did it. I mean, is that just him doing art for himself, or is he trying to make a statement? Does his art say something? And maybe your art isn't worth very much if it doesn't say anything. But back to the music thing, I recognize that if you're making music and you make it for pleasure, you make it for yourself, and it gets out there into the world, other people might then relate with what you did for yourself. And then it becomes it seems like it's art for purpose.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
It's not like there's a hard line with any of this when it comes to art. It's like one thing could be another thing. You could do art for purpose. It doesn't mean you're good. It doesn't mean you're more excellent. Though if I had to choose one, would much rather be somebody that makes art for purpose. I'm still trying to learn what that looks like. And I feel most like an artist when it comes into the excellence aspect of it all.
Yeah. I think going back to the part about even if an artist creates something without it being for other people, it's just the thing that they have to make for themselves.
Right.
Even art that's created without an explicit purpose for others in mind, I think it's often imbued with a purpose. Like a song that was written for literally no reason other than to be a song may still strike someone in a way that the artist never intended. And that's kind of what you were talking about. And so like the song then has a purpose that originally wasn't there. As if kind of it's not entirely up to the artist what the purpose is.
Right.
The artist can try and they can do their best to instill the purpose that they want in their art, but to a degree, it's not even entirely up to them. And that's kind of the beauty of art, having subjectivity.
Meaning you can't control how other people react to it.
Yeah, or are going to receive it. Exactly. If art has no connection with the person taking it in, then it has no meaning. But just for that person specifically, someone else might make that connection, and then it becomes their most emotional song ever for whatever reason. And so like that, for me, that kind of brought up the question though of then why does some art tend to make more connections with the people who take it in? If everything's subjective, then why do some pieces of art just rise above the ranks? And to go back to what we talked about earlier with some of the other stuff, I think that's another place where it comes back to truth. And so even though art is subjective, like I said before, I think ideally the most powerful art is based on truth. And the deeper that truth, the more universal it is, the deeper connection, and the more people will see that and relate with it and think, I've felt that before. And so like in this aspect, like comedians are special because they get to be kind of unfiltered truth tellers in an ideal world, at least. There's something to be said for anti-jokes that have zero meaning and are purely funny just because they betray your expectations. But usually I think a lot of times like the funniest jokes are the ones that at least have some basis in truth. The classic line, like, it's true because it's funny. Or, no, God, I keep doing that. It's funny because it's true.
Right.
It kind of like sums it up. And so like an artist can create with purpose in mind and can like drastically increase the chances that it's going to resonate with more people. But if there's no purpose originally given, that isn't to say that it can't have one still.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bow.
Well, so we both have doing art for yourself, doing art for purpose, and it being very subjective. But is being an artist a job? What does that look like if being an artist is a job?
It's funny answering this way because that sentence seems loaded to have a negative connotation.
Wow. It really does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a job is bad.
Like, oh, it's a job. It feels like a job. And it certainly can be. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Some artists may see it as their duty to create.
Okay, wait. Do you think that there are a lot of people out there that love their 9-to-5?
No.
You don't?
Well, okay.
That was a quick answer, by the way.
So you worded it differently than I thought you were. I think there are plenty of people who love or like or even love it. I think there are a lot of people that dislike.
But like maybe not 50-50.
Yeah.
Maybe more like 80-20. What kind of numbers are we working with
I'd
here?
be pulling random numbers out of my butt.
Oh, that is a dirty place to be pulling.
Let's say 73-27. I think the math is
good
right
answer.
there.
I'm good with that. We can move on.
And so, like, even an artist who feels like creating is their job, I think there's no shortage of powerful work that's been born from somebody simply doing their job. And even inspiration, which is typically not associated with something that feels like a job, quote unquote, it's a vastly important piece of creating. And whenever it strikes, like, it has to be capitalized on, like trying not to let inspiration go to waste. And there's the thing that we've talked about a bunch that's, inspiration comes to those who are working, basically. Not always. That, I feel like every time I quote that, I word it differently. But it's essentially, that message of, putting yourself in a position to be inspired and then to take advantage of that inspiration. And so I like trying not to let it go to waste. When I watch like an incredible movie or TV show, like we just watched Soul,
Oh man, good movie.
is everything that I wanted in a movie. And so I try not to just move on to the next one or turn it off and forget about it. I try to like lean into what it is saying and really feel the impact that it's had on me. So that it's not, it's not just moving on from that feeling of inspiration, but it's actually taking a minute to dwell and say like, what can I actually do with what this movie has blessed me with? So there's that, but art also doesn't have to be a job. Not everyone who has something to say or who enjoys an art form has to treat it that way. It doesn't make what they do less meaningful. It's just, I think, mainly two different ways of going about it.
Yeah. First of all, I really feel I have a lot of respect for people that are able to do a 9 to 5 and reach a place where they like what they do. My understanding of that is that it's a lot of mentality. And for people that are, positive about what they do and actually like what they do, I think that there's a lot of strong mentality in that is good. But I am also a huge advocate for not continuing in your 9 to 5 if you hate it. Because I'm like, don't torture yourself for a decade, can and will leave, if you just hate your job but don't do anything about it. But with art being a job, I mean, I'm not fully here yet, but I have a desire to make art kind of this passionate thing, or being an artist, make that like this passionate thing where I kind of take part in the world's affairs or the affairs of other individuals with my art. My art has something to say and has some meaning that I hope someone else can unravel. And again, when I look at sculptors that have made all of these monuments for governments and stuff, like the stories and the meaning and the purpose behind those are next level artists that are really taking part in the world's affairs. I mean, think about making a piece of art that signifies bringing two governments together. Mm-hmm. And you're one guy, and that was your doing. That's awesome. But everyone that wants to be an artist, you find out, are you doing it for you, or are you doing it for some higher whatever? Not all artists are the same, and again, I'm not fully here yet, but I think being an artist is like a heavy title that could be with a huge calling. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, I think it is a job. You're working all the time. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, you're observing.
Yeah.
And you are a transducer of sorts. Well, I'll say a converter. Okay. That's simpler and is a more accurate word, because transducer literally has to do with turning things into electrical signal.
Been learning about currents.
Right. So your job is to convert your observations into something that can be experienced by others.
Yeah.
An expression of the human experience for other people. I think of that as a job. I think of that as something that, to that level, again, for the famous sculptors out there, I don't think you do that if you're sitting back and you're like, I'm a guy that does art when I feel inspired.
Mm-hmm. It's more like, of a mantle that needs to be taken up.
You are working your brain.
Yeah.
Because you're striving for something more than yourself. Again, I don't fully know what all this means for me, but for me, I would like art to be a job.
Yeah. I feel that.
It's a bit intense. I bet there's
There
a good
are
amount
probably
of
a lot of
people-
people that would kind of feel frustrated by that
Well,
answer.
if you do art for yourself, probably most of what I'm saying, people would be like, that just sounds stressful
Sounds
or
dreadful and-
whatever.
yeah.
But, unlike certain people, which more power to them, but I believe in purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, It's this underlying current of life that's just powerful and meaningful and purposeful.
So does that give... That would seem to be a no to this question, but if we come at it from different angles, would that give any sort of opportunity for everyone to be an artist in some way, shape, or form?
I asked my dad earlier today, I was like, random question, are you an artist, or have you ever thought of yourself as an artist?
Which your dad is like a car sales guy.
Well,
but,
he's not a car sales guy, because everyone in the world hates car sales guys.
right.
Sorry, all the car sales guys. But he has been in sales for a long time, helping people. He basically sells money. And his initial answer was no.
Okay.
And then I'm like, okay, but wait a minute. Because I've got all this stuff in my brain preparing for this episode about what is an artist, and I've been asking myself that more than most people probably do in a lifetime. And he said, you know what? Yes. When I did basketball in high school, and I was like, I cannot believe he picked up on that
Yeah.
without really having ever talked to him about this stuff. So when he was a basketball player in high school, he said it was an art to practice. You're practicing an art. Your movements are an art. You put on a show with your team, because the crowd is also this give and exchange. And I said, what about your sales? Would you say that's an art? And he kind of shut that down. He was like, well, most people would actually think of that as just a skill set.
Okay. I was going to ask science.
No, he said a skill set.
Okay.
And I'm like, but you're naturally good at sales. But wouldn't you think of like the way that you answer the phone as an art, and the way that you give everyone a nickname, and that personable,
Way you make people relate to you.
isn't that an art? And he
Yeah.
thought about it for a second. He went, okay, yeah. And I don't know if it was just a fun
If
exercise.
he was just being like, yeah, sure.
Yeah. But I think to a degree, maybe everyone is an artist in the sense that they're able to be excellent at something, or hone their craft. But in another sense, even with that, I don't know. I feel like there's some people out there that just aren't somehow.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's a group of people I'm not thinking of that really just don't do anything with artistry or artfulness or excellence.
Yeah.
And I just don't know. I haven't really met anybody like that. Everyone that I've met to some degree has this little spark of art in them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Considering art is such a broad, thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think to go off of that, it's kind of like everyone is a potential artist. Way to go. You spilled water on yourself.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yep. I'm just going to call it out.
It's
For
everywhere.
anybody who didn't see it.
Okay.
And so everyone is a potential artist. Maybe not every activity has the potential to be art, but everyone is able to have art in their lives or to create in their lives. And so, you can have like some obvious answers like the painter and the musician and the whatever, but then you brought up chefs earlier. If art is the message and an artist is the messenger, a chef who sparks joy, like my brother's a chef, and when I asked him why he likes cooking, the answer he gave me is, or one of the answers he gave me is that when he brings somebody like a really good meal, or like a family or friends, and they all bite into it for the first time, and you just see that look of like,
He's just
oh
waiting.
my God, this is so good. And it's just, the joy that he sparked for them.
Right.
That in and of itself is kind of like a message of the, whether you want to call it like unifying or just kind of like ability to bring joy to a group of people that are gathered around a table. That's art.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, totally different here. But how is a con artist an artist? Because a con artist isn't, and I've actually spent some time thinking of this in the past because I wrote that song, Confidence Man.
Right.
Like, is a con artist giving anyone an experience? Not really. But that's another example.
Well, it's giving them an experience, I guess, just not a positive one.
Well, because they're being tricked, maybe they're just completely unaware of
Yeah.
an experience of lies.
It's like a thriller that has a big plot twist at the end. I never saw that coming.
Wow, this guy's really nice. Wow, and he just keeps touching my wrists. Wait, where'd my watch go?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that a con man and a con artist was this point in my research for this where I was like, that is another definition of artist right there that I actually mentioned before. But it's just the becoming excellent at something. The difference between a con man and a con artist. You can lie to people, you can try to trick people, but like to the degree that you are calculated and all of that, there's such a line in the sand between amateurs, con men, and just professionals,
right.
Con artist here with that. But if the answer to this question is everyone an artist is yes, which I'm not sure it is.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be as simple as yes or no.
Yeah. I mean, I would say we're all spectators. If there are two sides to this coin,
That's a good distinction to make.
We're all spectators. We all, breathe in, and I guess we all breathe out at the same time. If these are tied like that, yeah.
We breathe in what's being created.
Things that inspire us, whatever it is that inspires us, and then we breathe out. That's creating.
Yeah.
Things that fill us up with new things to think about. I guess.
So maybe some people
Fuel.
create with intentionality, and other people create passively.
Yeah. If we're not all artists, and there are certain people that are just spectators,
Right.
I could almost dive into that, trying to think, how important of a role is that? Because they might be just as important, but we don't have to get into that.
Yeah. That could be another episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one other question here.
Yeah.
Do artists matter? This was an interesting question. Well, actually, it's why do artists matter?
Right.
I was misreading.
The why do artists matter implies that they do.
Implies that they do, yeah.
And I would say the artists matter because people matter and our experiences matter. And we don't inherently understand the world or the experiences we have in it. And we don't inherently just understand ourselves. I think people will be like, I wouldn't say that. I know myself, or, whatever it may be. People were I think that we're constantly on a journey of learning about ourselves and learning about the world around us and the people around us.
Yeah.
And art gives us a way of making sense of it all without ever really giving a finite answer. And so maybe more than anything, it communicates a feeling. It serves as a jumping off point for where to look for answers. And art that I think that's why like art that gives a straightaway answer is the stuff that kind of feels what people would describe as preachy, or feels like it was made for children, made to teach. Because maybe we don't actually want the answers. We just want to know, like we're not alone in what we're experiencing, and in learning that we have an ability to navigate it, at least.
Imagine a television program that is designed to teach adults, but it is designed like it's teaching children. like Mr. Rogers for adults.
Right.
Sometimes I think that adults could actually use that quite a lot.
Yeah.
Some of us never learn certain things, or we never learn how to learn or learn how to teach ourselves.
Or what the word bland means.
And we need to go right back to the very base of all of this and build up from there with somebody that is humble enough to teach those simple things to adults.
Yeah.
I love teachers, and I love children's programs.
Yeah. Dude, they're so good.
Well, you see, and I'm an adult now, and I like watching them.
Mm-hmm.
And I run into people sometimes that they look at that with this like sort of pride.
Like, okay.
They're like, what? You're watching that? I'm like,
Oh, the bad kind of pride. That's
oh
like,
yeah, the bad kind. That's
Okay.
that's just like,
it's like, I can't believe you actually find value in
right? Because yes, there is good pride and bad pride, and theirs would have been
the bad kind.
pride. I'm like, don't freaking judge me for watching children's programs. This stuff's great.
Yeah. Well, that's, not all children's programs feel the preachy, teachy stuff.
And I'm not watching Dora the Explorer.
Right, right.
So.
The good stuff is the stuff that, like a Pixar film or
Yes.
or a Ghibli movie or whatever, that is able to communicate universal truth in ways that can bring value to people who are little tots and people who are big tots.
Mm-hmm.
And
we're all just on the potato spectrum somewhere.
Yeah. I'm striving towards that perfect crisp of a French fry.
Yeah. But that's a great example that is more relatable to what I was saying, is those animated movie companies,
Mm-hmm.
Disney and whatnot. I've actually heard adults say that they don't like those because they're for kids. And that
they just missed it.
That just makes me go crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a good conversation.
That was
good questions. I like those.
An exploration of what an artist actually is.
Yeah. I'll see you next week.
All right.
We will end before that moment. We will end before that moment. Well, it didn't end before that moment, but before this comes to a close, I want to say we have songs on Spotify, and while we're still learning how to produce ourselves more professionally, we're really excited about what we have up there, and we're excited about what we're going to be releasing soon. Also take a look at our TikTok and Instagram, also under Spondifferous. We post pretty frequently on those. And thank you for watching here on YouTube. Hopefully we're getting better at making our stuff likable and subscribable. In the meantime, let us know what you think.